When Ariel Monroe stepped into Fairview High on that crisp September morning, she believed she was entering a sanctuary, a new start in a quiet town, far from the chaos she left behind in Philadelphia. A fresh chapter, good schools, a chance at something better. But before the bell even rang, she felt a hand grip her collar. It was Ethan Wallace, son of the mayor, star athlete, golden boy. One swift move, and he had Ariel pressed against the lockers, her breath catching, her vision narrowing. And in that instant, everything changed. They say high school can be cruel. But it was something else. Ariel never asked for attention. She never asked for conflict. And yet, within 5 minutes of walking through those doors, she was staring into a world far darker than she'd ever imagined. But here's what you didn't expect. Ariel Monroe didn't go down without a fight. What happened next stunned everyone. Teachers, students, even the mayor himself. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you fight for justice and you think the Bullies has no rights to humiliate the girl, hit the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. But if you think they have every right to humiliate her without cause, comment your thoughts below. And don't forget to share the video to those who also fights for justice. She moved for peace. What she found was war. What she did next would change everything. I'm Ariel Monroe, and for years I carried a quiet truth, one I only realized after day one at Fairview High. I remember the way the corridor lights felt colder that morning, how they seemed to spotlight Ethan Wallace standing there, confident, untouchable, like he already owned the place. And that grip on my collar? It wasn't just physical, it was the weight of power, privilege, a legacy I had no part in. The mayor's son was making a statement and I was his message. But why pick me? Why the new girl? In a town where nothing ever changes, where everyone knows your name before you even say it, my presence was unsettling. I carried a history they couldn't read, history they couldn't control. Because before that moment I'd been trained, not for violence, but for self-respect, resilience, survival. I practiced jiu-jitsu after school back in Philly. I believed I was leaving all of that behind. Yet all I did was remind them I still had it in me. And make no mistake, Ethan Wallace knew exactly what he was doing. A proud football player, son of the mayor, he'd never been told no. The corridor that morning? It was as familiar to him as his own locker. He'd done this before. Maybe not to me, but he'd done it. So now I have to ask myself, and you, I have to ask Fairview, who really felt threatened that morning? Was it me, simply for being different? Or did my strength, quiet, poised, contained, challenge the fragile order they'd built? I carry a secret. Something deeper than the punch, the shove, the silence that followed. A part of my past that no one expected me to reveal. A part that would shift everything they thought they knew. So the questions I'm holding for you are these. Who was Ariel Monroe, really? And why did my arrival unsettle a town defined by conformity and control? Why would Ethan Wallace, raised to be an icon, lash out on day one at a girl he barely knew? What was I hiding under that quiet exterior? What truth made me more dangerous than they ever imagined? In the moments that followed, lives would be changed. Headlines would blame me. My future would dangle over a question I hadn't even dared to ask. Was justice really on my side? And believe me, the answers you're about to hear, they're the kind you don't forget. I was 17 when I stepped into Fairview High. 17 and tired. Tired of running, tired of apologies no one asked for, tired of my skin making me feel vulnerable. Philadelphia was behind me, but parts of its pain clung to me like shadows at midnight. My mother, Denise Monroe, believed this move would heal us. She tucked a photo of my dad in her purse every morning, a small reminder. We were survivors. But fresh starts don't erase scars. They just hide them under new wallpaper. I kept to myself, book in hand, head down. No one knew I'd once been a rising jiu-jitsu competitor, trophies gathering dust, lessons buried under grief. I thought I was leaving violence behind, but violence doesn't just vanish. Because home carried weight I saw every time I looked in the mirror, bruises I hid on my arms, scars I wrapped in long sleeves. My mother noticed. She would ask gently, "Ariel, are you okay?" I wanted to say, "I'm fine." But each question felt like a second chance to fail her. One night something happened. I was late returning a book to the library. I closed the door and behind it the walls shook. Two voices. Mine, startled. Another, loud and deep. The neighbor's shout. I froze. That voice wasn't me. It was me resisting something dark. I slipped into my bed, a quiet apology to my mom. I'd never shout again. And then there was Ethan Wallace. Charming, polished, boon of Fairview, mayor's son, golden boy. Everyone cheered when he entered a room. But I saw shadows behind the applause, little acts of cruelty coated in laughter. A shove here, a whisper there, an eye roll like poison dripping. He moved with confidence. But I learned early, confidence and cruelty often walk the same step. Ethan didn't just walk the halls with his cronies, he owned them. Blake, the loud one, he wore aggression like a badge. Tyler, eyes always watching, waiting to mirror whatever move Ethan made. They were a pack. And I, the silent new girl, was their prey. I thought I had buried my past. But every bruise I tried to hide, every late night in silence, they were warnings. A whisper in my mind. You are not soft. You are not invisible. Because my father's death, it changed me. I learned respect isn't given easily, it isn't quiet. And when I needed something, I took it. My mother wanted a fresh start. But I carried my history with me. Like a tucked-away letter you'd forgotten existed until it rattles out of a drawer and smacks you in the face. I remember laying in my new bed, staring at a ceiling I didn't recognize, wondering, what if I fail her this time? What if I can't be the quiet, perfect new girl she dreams of? School began, and every morning I pressed my uniform, watched my reflection, searched for the version of me that was safe. But safety is an illusion. My hands shook in the cafeteria. I ate slowly so I wouldn't draw attention. I learned the safest place was inside my own silence. But silence can be its own danger. One afternoon, I noticed whispers, footsteps behind me, a shove in the back, an arm around my shoulder, not friendly, but firm. That's when I realized, Ethan is territorial. This is his kingdom, and I was trespassing. His eyes told me, you don't belong here. In that moment, I looked past his expression. I saw the mayor's smile in the mailbox. I saw the town greeting its golden boy. And I felt betrayal, not by one kid, but by a system built to protect him, to mirror the exact privileges that pushed my father's life away. And when my mother tucked me in that night asking, "Did you make friends today?" I lied. I said yes. Because I believed in her dream more than I believed in my own safety. I say all this because I want you to feel it. The loneliness, the tension, the unspoken bargain. Be good, be silent, don't rock the boat. But I learned, I don't do bargains, not anymore. So when the corridor lights flickered on day one, when Ethan's hand closed around my collar, I heard centuries of invisible rules snapping. I knew what I had to do. Third period, history class, the hum of conversation, pages turning, chairs scraping. It all felt normal, almost soothing, until it wasn't. I remember the teacher pausing mid-sentence, eyes flicking to the back of the room where the door swung open. Some students whispered, thinking it was just another kid late from detention. But this was Ethan Wallace, and he wasn't late. He'd come for me. Moments earlier, I had answered a question, calmly, clearly, confidently. I didn't know classmates were watching. I didn't know the moment would echo through the hallway. I just wanted to learn. Then the classroom emptied, everyone following Ethan's silent lead. Outside, the corridor swallowed us. Bright fluorescent lights, lockers, a single phone held up, recording. He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. He thinks he's better than us now, Ethan said, his voice low, sharp. He held up my history test, 94%. Acting better. You trying to show off? He grabbed my collar. My breaths came fast, my heart froze. My mind screamed, but nothing moved, except every person around us frozen too, eyes wide, some raising their phones. The hold tightened. My back hit the cold locker. The metal under my shoulder dug in. I felt a crack of panic. I felt betrayal, like I was stabbed with expectation, fear, loss. Why him? Why me? I knew then that he expected me to crumble, expected me to apologize or cry or climb away and whisper that it was a misunderstanding. He wanted me to shrink. He wanted confirmation that he ruled here, but something inside me stirred. Memory flickered. My dad's words, my jiu-jitsu coach. The anger I'd practiced turning to focus, the discipline I learned to hold my ground. In a breath, I made a decision. I didn't have to stay quiet. I didn't have to be small. I twisted my body. I swept my leg. 3 years of training in motion, silent but powerful. His grip loosened just long enough. Before anyone realized it, I'd used his momentum, flipped him onto his back against the locker. Just once. Just hard. Silence. The phone dropped to the floor with a thud. A single gasp. Then, the hallway fell still, a vacuum in motion. Ethan's face, shock, anger. The sense that control had slipped. Around us, people stared. Teachers, nearby students, faces frozen. And there it was, one moment of clarity. I could fight, but I never wanted to. I could defend myself, but I never wished pain on anyone. And yet, this was self-respect in motion. This was survival. He looked up at me with something I'd never seen before, not dominance, but fear, rage, confusion. I should have been terrified, yet I wasn't. I was empowered. I was me. But what they didn't know is that I hadn't been in a fight in over a year, and I was still trained enough to end it in seconds. And that was the crack in the dam. The moment everything shifted. The moment Fairview's polished halls cracked open, exposing who we really were under that fluorescent glow. They expected me to break. They expected me to vanish. But in that moment, I found what it meant to be seen, and they'd never be the same. I think the moment Ethan hit the locker was when everything changed. For me, for him, for Fairview High. The echo of metal against skull, the collective intake of breath. Those seconds lasted a lifetime. He collapsed. The red stain on the floor caught every eye. At first, relief washed over me. I had defended myself. But then the weight of what I'd done crashed in. I'd hurt someone, even if it was him, even if it was necessary. They rushed him out, ambulance lights piercing the hallway, terrified onlookers scattering. I stood frozen, adrenaline pulsing, heart thumping, my chest burned. Relief, fear, regret. I didn't want this to be the story, his pain or mine. It wasn't supposed to end like that. Later that afternoon, I sat in the principal's office. The walls were too clean, too beige, no windows, just 2 administrators staring at me like I'd broken a sacred rule. I hadn't. I'd defended myself. But their eyes held something else. Fear. Fear of the fallout, of politics, of a storyline they couldn't control. They warned me. Suspension. Protecting Ethan's reputation, they said. Like what I did was disposable. Like they were protecting everything but me. Then came the real power move. The mayor. My chest tightened at the thought. Ethan's dad, the man who ran the town, making a phone call I couldn't hear, but felt in the walls. We can't let her ruin my son's future. His words hung in my ears, making my skin itch. It wasn't about truth. It was about control, about maintaining a narrative where the golden boy was innocent and the new girl was the villain. I walked home that day like a ghost, suspension note in my bag. Whispers followed me in hallways. Teachers smiled awkwardly, or not at all. The sense of exile washed over me, a familiar tide. I thought I left isolation in Philly. I was wrong. Then, like a spark in the dark, a video surfaced. Grainy footage, the flip, the fall. Nobody knew who uploaded it. But suddenly the entire town watched my defense play out in slow motion. Phones buzzed, social media exploded. Opinions formed in seconds. One teacher, the one who always looked me in the eye, sent it to an editor at the local paper. Anonymous, careful. They didn't want credit. They wanted truth out there. That teacher became my unexpected ally. Soon the town split. Coffee shops buzzed with argument. Social media had two sides. Violence is never okay. She defended herself. In my own home, I watched comments scroll by. My mom held my hand, her eyes wet but proud. My heart clenched. I'd scared her. But she showed me strength. I needed help. Real help. So my mom called a civil rights lawyer, someone who'd seen stories like mine hidden beneath legal clutter, who recognized the quiet power of justice. That move, hiring a lawyer, was more than legal strategy. It was reclaiming my voice. It said, I will not be silenced. I will not be erased. I spent nights replaying the hallway, the flip, wondering, could it end differently? Should I have backed down? I wrestled with guilt, relief, strength, sometimes all at once. But the fact remained, I was no longer invisible. I was a symbol of resistance, of justice, of a 16-year-old black girl who refused to be broken. They may have framed it as a fleeting incident, but everything else happened under the surface. Every whisper, every choice, every legal battle. My life changed forever, and the fight wasn't over. This is where the real story begins, when you go beyond the moment of violence to the quiet, fierce unraveling of a system built to protect the powerful and silence the vulnerable. They think the video was everything, but it wasn't. That footage was only the surface. My truth was deeper. While Ethan lay in the hospital, the weight of what I'd done began to cradle me, gently, purposefully. I needed justice, not revenge, but someone demanded I be the villain. The story kept getting rewritten. Her, the attacker, him, the victim. I felt the world tilting on its axis. I wasn't sure if I'd break or if it would. Then came the first revelation. Ethan and his crew weren't innocent. I learned of 3 prior incidents, calls to the nurse's office, hushed meetings with counselors, students pushed into lockers, whispered taunts, but nobody saw, or nobody wanted to. The school file had holes where names should have been, accountability, erased. My throw wasn't the first time Ethan used his privilege to hurt others. Mine was just the first time someone fought back. Then came the second shock. I was more prepared than I thought. I'd held that black belt since age 9. State competition, medals, confidence. Competition ended after my dad died. I left martial arts behind out of grief, not fear. But that discipline never left me. It was in every breath, every heartbeat that day. I hadn't been starting a fight. I was answering one. The courtroom was glass and cold. Cameras hovered, hushed voices. I sat before a judge who'd heard too many versions of this story. Ethan took the stand, voice steady, words rehearsed. He said I attacked him without reason, said I was the aggressor. I watched him lie with a calm I would have envied if it weren't my life he was rewriting. Then, surveillance footage, not the viral hallway tape, but someone caught on school security cameras. Ethan twisting my arm days before, Blake and Tyler sneering at me, a shove in the locker room corridor. The visuals cut through every argument, the premeditation, the cruelty, the cover-up. The room shifted. Gasps. The air changed. When the judge spoke, I felt the ground settle beneath me. Her actions constituted self-defense. School must review its procedures. This cannot stand. My chest ached, not from victory but from healing. My mother wept, words failing her. That moment, recognition. For the first time, I mattered more than the storyline they printed. My mother took the stand, heartbroken, fierce. My daughter didn't go looking for a fight. She went looking for peace. Her voice cracked. The courtroom held its breath. She was pleading for truth, but also for forgiveness, for allowing me to carry those scars alone. Her pain became my power. The judge nodded. The verdict wasn't just legal, it was deeply personal, validation of my survival. That twist, the revelations, reshaped everything. The narrative flipped. I wasn't just Ariel, the quiet new girl. I was Ariel, the black belt, Ariel, the truth teller, Ariel, the refusal to be silenced. And yet, even that validation didn't make me safe. It didn't erase the whispers that followed me home. It didn't promise peace. But it opened a door, one that led beyond fear, toward purpose, toward healing, toward something greater than survival. The next chapter one would ask us all, what do we do when the powerful fall? And who stands with the fallen? They thought I was trouble, a shadow in their sacred halls. But they never saw what I'd become. After the court's decision, the ripple turned into a wave. The town I once feared was starting to shake. Ethan Wallace, no longer golden in the eyes of the law. He was sent to a juvenile correction facility, not for what happened in that hallway, but for a separate assault uncovered during the investigation. The privilege he wore like armor shattered in the courtroom light. I walked past that locker hallway months later. It was cleaner now, brighter. But I remembered the weight of that morning. I felt the flow of all those eyes, the roar of whispers, and I felt peace. In the weeks that followed, Mayor Wallace resigned. Scandals, cover-ups, attempts to rewrite the story. It all came crashing down. The man who held the town's power like a scepter could no longer shield his son, or himself. He stepped down, leaving behind a legacy I never wanted to define me, but one I forced to re-examine. They say people like to see winners. People like clear stories. The victim, the hero, the resolution. But my truth is messier. It isn't over. A martial arts foundation reached out. They'd seen the footage. They heard my story. They believed that a black belt, trained but displaced, could teach more than kicks or throws. They said I could teach survival, resilience, dignity. They offered me a scholarship to train under a top coach and to lead a program for underprivileged youth, just like me, moving through pain, moving toward strength. And for the first time since Philly, since Dad, I felt grounded again. I had a purpose bigger than surviving. There was one secret nobody expected. Someone from inside Ethan's crew pulled the thread that unraveled the lie. It was Tyler, quiet Tyler, always in Ethan's shadow. He leaked the video. He released the files. He chose truth over loyalty. He said later, I saw what he did. I couldn't be part of hiding that. In that shaky moment, I realized, allies aren't always who you expect, and courage isn't always loud. Everything moved forward, but I didn't move past. I carry the weight of what we uncovered, what we stood for. I carry the responsibility of being seen, of being heard, of using this moment not just for me, but for every quiet voice buried by fear. So I ask you now, thinking about what unfolded, if Tyler hadn't shared that video, would I have been expelled? Charged? Would someone like me even survive a system built to silence me? Because that's the real question. It isn't just about me, or Ethan, or Fairview High. It's about every place that values a polished reputation over truth. Every institution that sidelines the vulnerable while celebrating those with power. I am Ariel Monroe. I walked into a hallway expecting safety. I faced a storm disguised as a golden biography. I struck back because silence wasn't an option, and in the end I found something bigger than self-defense. I found justice, truth, and purpose. But I want to know, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you stand? Would you speak? Or find strength in someone unexpected, like Tyler? Let me know in the comments. This is my truth. My journey from fear to fight to unexpected hope. Because sometimes true heroism isn't in the blow. It's in the choice to no longer be invisible. Fairview tried to break her. tried to smother her strength beneath hush money, closed doors, and staged apologies. But Ariel? She ain't built to fold. She didn't just defend herself, and she broke the silence. And in doing that, she held up a mirror to an entire town, showed them what they really were, showed the rest of us what we could be. Most girls in her shoes don't get a second chance, don't get a courtroom that listens, don't get to walk out with their head high. Ariel did. But not without bruises you'll never see. Not without nights where the weight of it all pressed so hard on her chest, she couldn't breathe. This world don't always reward the ones who speak out. It punishes them, labels them, tries to erase them. But this time, justice had a name, and it was Ariel Monroe. I still remember the hush that fell after Ethan hit that locker. That sound, like the air got sucked clean out the hallway. Nobody moved, nobody breathed, except her. She stood still, solid, eyes like steel. That moment didn't just protect her, it shifted everything. So now I gotta ask you, do you think she was right to fight back? Not just with her fists, but with the truth? Have you ever seen somebody stand up like that? In school, in a job, maybe even in your own family? What would you have done in that hallway? Be honest with yourself. Would you speak? Would you freeze? Or would you be the one to press record, even if it meant losing your so-called friends? This story ain't just about one girl. It's about the systems that fail us, the voices that go unheard, the truths we bury because they're too heavy to carry alone. But every now and then, somebody lifts that weight and holds it high for the world to see. Ariel did that, and it changed everything. So if stories like this matter to you, stories that pull back the curtain and show what really happens behind school walls in quiet towns in rooms nobody wants to talk about, then stay with us. Subscribe, share, and leave your truth in the comments. 'Cause we ain't done. And if you thought this story was wild, wait till you hear what happened in Hillsborough Elementary, where it wasn't the kids causing the fear. It was the teacher,